Hello, friends. Tonight, we begin with a decision that Pentagon officials had feared, dismissed, and quietly prepared for at the very same time. A decision that did not unfold over months, or even weeks, but in a single day. One day that rewrote the air defense map of Eastern Europe. One day that fundamentally changed how this war is fought. And one day that handed Ukraine the one capability Moscow had sworn it would never allow. What President Donald Trump authorized today crossed a line Vladimir Putin believed would never be crossed. And the moment that line broke, the response from the Kremlin was immediate, furious, and unmistakably panicked. For nearly 14 months, there were signs. Not press releases, not official briefings, just signals. Subtle indicators that something unprecedented was being prepared. Donald Trump has always been unpredictable, but never random. His unpredictability follows a pattern, a rhythm, almost a doctrine. And what set off alarms in Moscow this week was not noise, but silence. Russia watchers who study the American political calendar know the warning signs. The sudden cancellation of mid-level briefings. The unusual quiet from Mar-a-Lago. A sharp increase in secure calls between the Pentagon and Kyiv. And most importantly, the complete disappearance of leaks. When Washington stops leaking, it usually means something very loud is coming next. Early this morning, U.S. satellite operators detected unusually heavy airlift activity departing from Dover Air Force Base and Ramstein Air Base. Multiple C-17 Globemasters loaded with containers that analysts recognized immediately. Containers that had not been moved in more than 30 years. These are the kinds of crates the United States only deploys when it wants the message to be unmistakable. Patriot Pack, 3 MSE systems, THAAD interceptors, or possibly both. At the time, Western observers did not know exactly which systems were inside those aircraft, or whether the transfer included multiple layers of air defense at once. But what they did know was this. The United States was changing its red line posture in Ukraine. And when an American president shifts posture without explanation, even by inches, the Kremlin pays very close attention. Tonight's warning from the Russian Foreign Ministry was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Following an emergency session of Russia's Security Council, spokesperson Maria Zakharova described Trump's move as provocative, destabilizing, and, most importantly, a direct act of war. Her reasoning was revealing. Because this decision strips Russia of its last remaining advantage, air superiority. Deterrence only works if the target hesitates. Vladimir Putin did not hesitate. In fact, his response today was among the fastest we have seen since the war began. Within 4 hours of the first American aircraft landing in Eastern Europe, the Kremlin ordered immediate long-range bomber patrols over the Black Sea. Caliber cruise missiles were launched into open water as a demonstration of force. Every strategic airbase from Engels to the Ukrainian border was placed on maximum combat alert. These were not routine patrols. These were maximum-range Tu-95 bombers, escorted by MiG-31 interceptors carrying Kinzhal hypersonic systems. Russia only deploys these assets this way when it believes it may need to absorb a first strike. Then came confirmation from the Pentagon. The United States had transferred no fewer than 6 Patriot missile batteries and 1 complete THAAD battery to Ukraine, including, for the first time ever, an export version of the THAAD-ER interceptor, a system that remained classified until yesterday. Washington moved before Moscow could reposition its remaining Su-57 squadrons. The timing window was hit perfectly. The logistics window, the political window, and the announcement window. At 3:17 p.m., President Trump posted a message on Truth Social that was as blunt as it was historic. Ukraine gets the best. Russia gets the message. Deal done. In plain terms, the United States had just targeted Russia's last illusion of escalation dominance. The ability to strike Ukrainian cities from standoff range with near impunity had been challenged directly. The interceptor shield that could neutralize that strategy had arrived in theater. That is why the Kremlin's reaction was so severe. This was not symbolism. This was operational. Left unchecked, it could end Russia's strategic bombing campaign entirely. Ukraine understood that immediately, and their response was calculated, disciplined, and decisive. They did not wait for congressional debate. They did not wait for European consensus. They accepted the systems and deployed the first battery west of Kiev before sunset. And this is where the story becomes even more explosive. Intelligence sources now believe that President Trump's move was designed not only as a military escalation, but as a political stress test. A test of how fragile Vladimir Putin's domestic control has become after recent battlefield losses and growing instability within Russia's elite military units. Putin had expected the West to blink. Instead, he got the opposite. Trump did not blink. He delivered a capability so decisive, so overwhelming, that even the Kremlin was forced to react publicly. Former U.S. officials speaking under anonymity described the maneuver as strategic judo, using Putin's own overreach to justify the one escalation Moscow cannot effectively counter. And Ukraine proved today that it remains both grateful and lethal. Their deployment speed was not just fast, it was choreographed. The first THAAD radar reportedly went active while Russian reconnaissance drones were still operating over Belarus. By the time Moscow realized what had happened, the systems were already integrated. As the evening progressed, more details emerged. The U.S. Air Force conducted its largest single-day airlift since the early months of 2022, forcing Russia to scramble nearly every available fighter aircraft. Poland quietly closed its airspace to all Russian-registered planes. Norway reportedly jammed Russian GPS navigation signals over the Barents Sea, disrupting strategic bomber routes. This was not just an arms transfer. This was a coalition air denial operation, a coordinated effort to strip Russia of freedom of maneuver in the skies. Air superiority is the one advantage Putin has struggled to maintain since Ukraine received long-range strike capabilities in 2023. And tonight, that advantage is slipping away entirely. Putin believed Trump was transactional. He believed Trump feared nuclear saber-rattling. He believed the United States would never risk escalation over Eastern Europe. Tonight, all three assumptions collapsed. Ukraine now possesses the most advanced air defense umbrella on the planet. Russia has lost its most potent, coercive tool. And President Trump has demonstrated that he is willing to cross,